Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's RD to RD live show. My name is Megan Boitano, founder, owner of RD to RD, and I'm excited today to talk about webinar basics, really from the angle of a private practice dietitian who may be using a webinar to bring in new clients or launch an online program. This topic, the topic of webinars, was the very first RD to RD live show that I did way back when. And it was actually with Amy Gorin and Erin Polinsky-Wade about the way they use webinars for Master the Media. Kind of a different, kind of a B2B type approach, so a little bit different than what Samantha and I are going to talk about today, maybe applying a little bit more on that business to customer to a client focused approach for webinars. And this is interactive, so I have a list of questions that I believe will help to really dig into the topic and help you get a lot of value out of today's live show. But I'm all about answering your questions as well. So if there's something that has really been on your mind in relation to webinars that you are tuning in today to specifically get an answer to, drop that in comments. Would also love to hear if you've done a webinar before. Feel free to tell us about your experience, and we'll be sure to keep our eyes on the questions throughout the show. So Samantha, excited. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we're here today on the kickoff day of the RD Entrepreneur Symposium, as we're both speakers this year,
Yes, I
right?
know. I love that.
Yeah, so here we are connecting live. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your career journey as a dietitian? How did you get into private practice? Just give us a little background so we can kind of get to know you.
Okay, sounds good. So I became a dietitian in 2011. So I guess that was about 8 years ago. And shortly thereafter, I decided to kind of like do a side hustle. So I looked back and it was 2013 that I launched my blog and just like did my DBA and kind of put my shingle up and put my name out there for the world that I could see clients. And so it was kind of a slow and steady side hustle. Couple babies came along during that time. So I didn't get completely serious about it until probably this past, probably 2017, 2018. And then I was able to quit my full-time job this past May and do consulting in private practice full-time from May 2018 so about a year of full-time self-employment. So
I love that. I love that. I think everybody's story is a little bit different as far as the time in your career, when kids are coming along, that, when you really became serious versus when you started. I really like that perspective about where you've been.
Yeah, you don't have to start all in. I think it's a big misconception of like, if I'm going to do private practice, I have to like be 100%. Like you can start it as a side hustle and just take a few clients here and there until you're ready to like really move up to the next level. So
yeah, there's some path you have to follow, and if you're not on it, you're doing it wrong or something. I don't know.
That's silly.
Yeah,
Right.
agreed. I think that's very silly. So what types of, you have a specialty that types of clients that you see? Just tell us a little bit more about what you're passionate about.
Yeah. So, I mean, I did dialysis for a long time in my career. So, I thought that I would go and specialize in renal disease, but actually for me personally, my passion is helping people who have anxiety because I have anxiety. So it's like, I'm always researching what can I do nutrition wise and exercise wise to help my anxiety be better. So I have started a Facebook group and started taking clients specific to anxiety. And actually they've gotten really good results through using their nutrition to help them with anxiety. So that's kind of the path I'm going down right now. And obviously it could change at any time, but that's where I'm focused in right now.
I like that. And I always hear having, a specific, niche helps to attract more specific clients. Have you found that to be the case? And then we'll dive into webinars.
Definitely. I think it is important to be specific about who you're targeting. But I think at the same time, you don't have to like nail yourself into like a corner if you don't want to yet. Like it's okay to explore and like take different clients in different areas and figure out what you even enjoy doing the most. Like obviously I did renal disease for a long time. That doesn't mean I have to do renal disease for the rest of my life. It just means that I have a lot of specific knowledge about that topic. When I was an intern, I thought I wanted to do nutrition support, but clearly that's not the path I've gone at all. So
No.
you never know. You just never know what you're going to end up in. I've heard people, one of my good dietitian friends did WIC for a very, very, very long time. And now she's in dialysis too. So it's like, you know, you never know where your path's going to take you. You could end up from one side of nutrition to the other within a few years. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about our careers. There's just
Agreed.
so many options. And if you get bored or something, you can just be like, okay, well, let me try something else.
Exactly. Well, my career has been kind of a menagerie, and I wouldn't change it for anything. So I
Exactly.
love that you can. Maybe I have a little bit of career ADD. I don't know, but I think it was all culminating into this thing that I'm doing right now, right? My side hustle, the RD to
Exactly.
RD. So I'm so. I have to say, I have a little bit of apprehension about webinar. It's been something that's been on the sidelines for me. I don't know if I don't have the guts or I feel overwhelmed. I've written a blog post about some of the basics, but there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to a webinar. So I'd like you to walk us through a little bit of how did you decide that, okay, I'm going to use a webinar, and exactly how did you maybe first get started using a webinar? And then maybe we can talk about some of the iterations and how that changed for you.
Okay, sounds good. Well, let me just first say, like, girl, I like 100% feel you because I have anxiety here. And so for me, it's like, okay, now I have to not only figure out how to do a webinar, figure out all the tech behind it,
That
but then I also have to figure out how to like calm myself down. So, you know, I still get anxious. Like even before this live show, I got a little anxious and I was like, okay, I'm going live and I got to, you know, make sure I do my breathing techniques and my, you know, mindset work. So, you know, there's always going to be that underlying anxiety. And if you think that's going to go away, it's never going to. It's just new levels, new devils. So once you get used to doing something, then it's like, okay, now I have to go speak on stage and now I'm nervous, or now it's a bigger audience and now I'm nervous, or now I'm on live TV or I'm on like NBC, now I'm nervous, or now I'm on Oprah. So it doesn't matter what it is that you're doing. There's always going to be something that just makes you a little bit nervous. And I think it's the same thing with webinars. And you know, it is a fear that like, well, what if my tech doesn't work? And what if this messes up? And what if that messes up? And let me just tell you, I have messed up a lot of webinars, a lot of them, you know, and I've done some really great ones. I've gotten great feedback from some of them, and others, you know, just bombed. But it's okay. Like we've all screwed up and nothing bad happened to me. I'm still alive. You know, I made it through. I've fumbled through a few words. I've forgotten what I was going to say. I've had long, awkward pauses. It's okay. Like these things are going to happen. And that's just how you practice and get better.
So
Um,
your first live webinar, or I guess as you thought about using this, how did you kind of decide that it was the best way to connect with your customers, and how did you go about kind of putting things into place?
So when I first decided I wanted to like really do private practice, I started looking at like other coaches and other examples, like role models and what they were doing. And so I went through a few like online programs, and basically most of the online programs I went through, it was like, this is what you have to do to be successful. You have to do, you know, some kind of engagement. Doesn't necessarily have to be a webinar, but like a live show is another great example, but some kind of thing that people can watch and engage with and ask you questions. And so you're going to have to put yourself out there in some way, shape, or form, whether it is like you can't just hide behind your keyboard all the time because then people don't really know who you are. So whether you do a podcast, whether you do live shows, whether you do a webinar, people really like to have a person that they can see A, as a real person, and B, they actually really like to see you make mistakes. I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, but if you come onto a live show and you mess up your lines or you fumble around, they're like, oh, this is like a real live person who's really trying to share a message with me and not just like an Autobot or something. I don't know. My kids were talking about Transformers yesterday, so that's why I got that stuck in my head. But
Well,
But yeah, they like it to be real.
yeah.
So, so to see somebody talking just like we're talking right here, you know that Megan's a real person and I'm a real person. You can relate more. So I think that's the benefit to webinars. And so I just really took the advice of my mentors and said, like, okay, well, if webinars are what I have to do to make this happen and to connect with people, then I guess I'm going to do that.
And I think it's really important, though. You said you made a lot of mistakes. I think where a lot of us get hung up is we can't do a webinar until we can do a perfect webinar. Since it's not, you can spend, it's got to, as far as, is it going to convert? Is it this and that? Ultimately, your first webinar is going to be not perfect. And I really need to accept the own words that are coming out of my mouth right now because, you want to do that perfect webinar. And what I'm hearing you say is you just kind of decided to get started with webinars and failed your way to a successful webinar.
We as dietitians, we love our world to be like very detail oriented and to get everything right and to make sure that all of our numbers are right and that we're doing things properly. And that's why our personality type is successful in this career, because, we're calculating nutrition needs. You want to get that right. You want to make sure you tell people the right thing. You want to make sure you've studied up before you do it. And I think that's really helpful in some aspects of our career, but some things, especially when it comes to entrepreneurial stuff, like you can't wait until it's perfect to get started. You just have to dive right in and just do it. And if it messes up, like one of my coaches says, you've got to crash the bus. You've got to let yourself crash the bus because it's going to happen. And the sooner you crash the bus, the sooner you can get to the part where it's, well-rounded and it looks amazing and professional. But every single expert that you'll look at on TV, whether it's Oprah or somebody like that, they've been through that phase of where they weren't 100% perfect and polished. They had to go through that in order to make it to that point.
So let's talk a little bit about technology that you used for your webinar, and then kind of switch gears to talking about how you kind of advertised and marketed your webinar. Because I think, is anybody going to show up? How do I get people to register for this webinar? And then what kind of actions do I want them to take? Because I'm obviously using it to sell or, encourage, whether I'm selling a package or an online product. So maybe should we tackle technology first, or how do you think might flow better?
Yeah, let's do it. So yeah, you're going to have some kind of platform on which to run your webinar. So the goal is, it's just like, a sales seminar. You want to invite people into a room, share a presentation with them, and then invite them to take it a step further with you, to work with you one-on-one, or to buy a program or package or something like that. So it's the same thing, but we're just going to do it online instead of in person. So if you've ever been to like a seminar where you sit in the room for an hour, hear a talk, and then at the end they pitch you something, it's very similar to what we're doing here, just in an online format. So you're going to need some kind of technology, and there's a million ones out there. I personally use GoToWebinar. I know some people who use Zoom.
So the difference between a web meeting and a webinar tool, and I think that's an important distinction, that sometimes Zoom has a Zoom webinar. It's very different than just your average Zoom where you just share a link. It's really a tool that's designed for webinars, letting people register in advance, reminders, allowing you to interact with people during the webinar. It's a tool. So maybe...
Yeah, so GoToWebinar, for example, they have GoToMeeting as well. So it's not the same as like a work meeting where you're all meeting and discussing a topic. A webinar is very specific, and you have to think about, if you were doing it in person, it's always like, it's just, online world is the reflection of an in-person world. So a meeting you would have in a conference room, or you would all sit around a table and you would discuss things. It would be more like equal participation, versus if you went to a seminar, where you've got the one person standing up on stage with the PowerPoint behind them, and they're talking about what's on the PowerPoint, and maybe people are asking questions, but the focus is really on that person and the information that they have to share.
Yeah, and even there may be, now these webinars or even in-person seminars have interactive elements, right? You're getting asked questions during the seminar, allowed to poll and interact with the speaker as they're speaking.
You do want to be interactive. So GoToWebinar does allow you to do a poll. It allows people to ask questions. People can raise their hand. So that is more interactive than they used to be. So they are improving as far as like being more reflective of real in-person meetings. But yeah, so it is more of you're talking most of the time versus a meeting where it's more of a roundtable discussion.
I really like that distinction. I think it was really helpful. I haven't heard it described that way before.
Yeah. So
you use GoToWebinar, and then there's that whole technology around. You have evergreen webinars where they're simulating a live. So it's very hard unless you're a holographic figure to do a in-person seminar where people could attend and see like a hologram of you presenting over and over again versus a evergreen webinar, which some of the tools, webinar platforms. Have you used an evergreen webinar? Maybe you can explain that.
Yes, I have used an evergreen webinar. In fact, for me, I started with evergreen because of the anxiety. I was given the option from my coach to either or, like you can either do a live webinar or you can do a recorded webinar and then have that be your presentation that you show people. So you can either provide them the link to it, or sometimes you can make it seem live. So they sign up for it and they still have to kind of wait 10 minutes. And people really do not know that, most of the people do not know that it's not live.
And I've heard some people do a hybrid where, that the actual content delivery is live, but coming on at the end of the webinar and maybe doing the pitch or answering questions, that there's kind of options.
Yeah, hybrid is good too. So you can record part of it and then just pop in at the end to answer questions, just like you said, or you can also have people watch it and it's recorded. And then, like, for example, I think Stealth does this where they can type in a question in the comment and it'll send you an email as they're like at the time that they type in the question if they're watching a recording. So there are lots of examples, but not to overwhelm anybody with like, there's so many options. Like you could spend all day researching options, and don't get stuck in like the weeds of like, well, which platform do I choose? Like just pick something, because I did Stealth for a little while. I tried Zoom for a little while, and now I'm on GoToWebinar. So like you can always change. Unless you sign a contract or something, you can change which provider you use. So just try it out and play around with it and see what it is that you enjoy and which platform kind of syncs with you and your personality type, and then go with it from there. But you're never going to know until you figure it out. So don't get lost in doing research about which one you like the best. Maybe a little bit, but don't spend too much time there.
So you talked about that registration process. So obviously we have this technology, and I think that's maybe a good transition point into registration, and people have to sign up for your webinar. So there's that whole, how do I get people to sign up? What was effective for you? And I know I'm going to dive a little bit into you used some Facebook ads, which I think is valuable when you're starting out. Maybe you don't have a large list, or different ways to bring people into your webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. So luckily GoToWebinar and most of the webinar softwares have their own registration page. So if you're just starting out and you really don't know how to make a registration page, you can just use their native page. People just go to the link. Once you create the webinar, they give you a link. People go there, they sign up, they're registered. You can collect email addresses that way. You can just message any of your friends, family members, followers. I mean, you don't have to have some crazy like list to do a webinar.
And it has all of the automated reminders with some kind of default text, I'm sure.
Yeah, so GoToWebinar will remind them, and you can select how often, like a day before, an hour before, whatever, and you can set it however you want. And they do have some defaults in there if you don't know what to do, but I think you should do a couple of reminders because people are really busy.
I think the tool is really important, because I hear so many people that make things really, really difficult because they don't want to pay for like a webinar platform. So you use just regular Zoom, and then you use Zapier, and you put it into MailChimp, and then these automated, and you end up creating this incredible maze of tools, and it's really complicated, and it doesn't end up working as seamlessly as you'd like to, rather than allowing you to focus on the content and really leveraging the webinar. You're so in the weeds about the technology to try to save maybe some expense on a webinar tool. Any thoughts on that?
You have to value your time. I mean, we only have so much time at the end of the day. Everybody gets 24 hours in a day, and obviously we have to sleep too, which is very important. We all know as dietitians how important that is. So if you are spending, 4 or 5 hours trying to figure out how to piece, like, duct tape all this stuff together to make it work, when you could pay $100 for a tool that's going to make it work for you, how much is your time worth? I mean, my time, in my opinion, is worth more than $100 an hour. So I'm not going to spend all that time trying to figure out how to piece all this together. I go to the experts, I ask them what they use, and I take their feedback. Sometimes I use what they tell me to, sometimes I explore on my own, and then I figure something out that's going to be the biggest time saver and automate it as much as possible. And I think we really have to keep in mind how valuable our time is.
That's a really good point. And I think from the get-go, you invested in a tool for your webinars, right? Is that...
Yeah, so I did invest in Stealth first. That was the first tool that I invested in. I think it was like $59 a month, and that's for automated webinars. But it's been a little buggy lately, especially with things being updated, and they haven't updated their software. I know they're working on it, but then I switched. I did Zoom for a little while, and then I didn't like how, like you said, it was difficult for me to automate registration with Zoom. So that's when I switched to GoToWebinar. And even though I don't like the platform quite as much as I like Zoom, I like the automation a lot more than I liked Zoom, and just the ability to collect email addresses and automatically have those names and not have to worry about it. So that's why I use that now. But you just have to, like I said, just get started, jump in there, schedule your first webinar, put it on the calendar, and then you'll be committed to it. You'll say, 2 weeks from today, I'm going to do a webinar, and I'm going to figure out how to make it work and get all these pieces together.
I like it. So how did you market that specifically? Recently, I know you use Facebook advertising to maybe talk to us about a couple of different ways you've marketed your webinars.
Yeah, so my first webinar that I tried to do, I did a weight loss for the wedding. I don't know why I picked that. I was just like, I got to think of something. So I'm going to pick this. I know people want to get married and they want to look good. So I'm going to do weight loss for the wedding. I've totally moved 180 degrees away from weight loss. But I did run a very small Facebook ad. I had no clue what I was doing. I didn't know how much people needed to pay. Like, I didn't know how much to pay, how to set it up. I just did it. I didn't get hardly any registrations. And my webinar was pre-recorded, and I don't think it was that good anyway, but it was out there into the world. So that was my first experience. And then I did weight loss for men. So I was still trying to figure out weight loss. And I did also a Facebook ad. And that time I got maybe like 20 or 30 people registered.
Did you think it was something you did different, or just the topic? Did you get a little bit better at your Facebook ads?
I think I got a little better at the Facebook ads, yeah. Because, Facebook ads is a learning curve for sure. And you have to kind of know what you're doing a little bit. Sorry, this light is automatic, so it just went off. But Facebook ads, you kind of have to play around with it a little bit and explore and figure things out, or get help from experts who know Facebook ads, which is what I did too. I've hired some coaches to help me through it. So that one went a little bit better. And then the next time I really took some time to figure out what is it that I want to share with the world, and who is it that I'm trying to reach, not just trying to sell something, but really what is my message going to be? What do I want to be known for? And I dug a little deep and did a lot more deeper work. And that's when I was able to really have the impact and the success that I wanted. And that's when I was able to get 300 or 400 people registered for a webinar.
Wow.
So I'm still a work in progress. So I've gotten the 300 or 400 people registered, and I have made some sales for my anxiety program, but I still haven't got that conversion process completely 100%. I'm able to add people to my email list very easily, but then I still have to nurture them and follow up that way. So I think it's something that you just get better at the more you do it. And if your first webinar, if nobody shows up, at least you put yourself out there and at least you tried.
I think you made a really important point. I think we sometimes put certain, whether it's a webinar or going live or learning, getting Instagram posts that get hundreds of likes, that it's one piece of the puzzle, right? That
Yeah.
even if you have a webinar that you get 300 signups from, you're still then learning nurturing, and you're learning that conversion, and you're looking at the statistics. That it's not, the webinars aren't a magic, they're not a magic bullet, right?
It's not. Yeah. I mean, we see
But
those things on Facebook, like the
yeah,
ads all the time that are like, yeah, just do a webinar and everything will be great and you'll make successful sales and everything. I'm lucky and I'm happy that my business made a profit last year. 80% of businesses don't.
yep.
And so it's like, you have to take these ads that are saying these things of like, you're going to make 6 figures or $1 million, or like, you have to take that with a grain of salt. People who are making that kind of money have been at this for a while and they
You're
know
figuring out who you are. And I think you made a really good point about the fact that you did a few webinars that weren't really your authentic self, but it was part of the journey of getting to a webinar that was successful, that you had to do those first two, the automated one, and then feeling a little bit more comfortable knowing your own, whether anxiety, that I did that pre-recorded one, but then I was able to become confident enough to do the in-person live one on a couple of topics that maybe didn't resonate with necessarily in finding who you are and your target, and then to have a webinar that got a lot of signups. And then how do we define a successful webinar, right?
Yeah.
So having a lot of people added to your list, but then getting them to actually show for the webinar, right?
That's
And then
the next step.
you got to have people
Yeah.
on, right? So that they'll hear your pitch, and then, that conversion and being,
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you have to take it one piece at a time, right? So, and I like how you break it up like that, because it is like, okay, how first things first, how do I get people to sign up for the webinar? That is a challenge in and of itself, because people value their time too, and they value their email address. So
what did you do? How did you get those 300 signups? So what do you think were some keys in that?
So it was definitely my Facebook ad copy. So just working on
So describe
copywriting.
a little bit more like ad copy. I think people who maybe haven't done Facebook ads, that might be new terminology or
So
familiar.
ad copy is just the words so you've got your ad picture that's like the little square, and the words above it that would just be like any Facebook post, except instead of it being a Facebook post, it says sponsored.
Right.
So that's how you know it's an ad. And then those words is called your ad copy. And really, you have to grab people pretty quickly on. And I really like story copy. So you're telling a story, especially if you're telling your own story, because Facebook does not like, and I go over this in Symposium. So I don't know if
Hopefully people are registered for the RD Entrepreneur Symposium.
Or not yet, but in Symposium, I do go over copy a little bit, but people they have to grab their attention and you have to tell a story. But Facebook is very picky about, you can't say certain things.
Yes.
Like you can't be like, so a lot of my ads got denied at first until I figured out how to get Facebook to accept my ad. So you can't say things like, do you want to lose 10 pounds or are you overweight? Like you can't call people out for any sort of quality that they may have. So I think the best
way to
make
health claims, you can't make really significant promises.
Exactly. And you can't say you're treating any disease. Even if we are, we can't say that because it's
not in a Facebook ad. It's just not allowed.
Right. So you have to say that later on in your process. So I think it's better to tell a story, because then you're not promising anything. You're just telling people how you came to this information. And so I told a story in my Facebook ad about how I was so anxious and stressed out that I was eating like donuts in the morning because I couldn't handle getting good nutrition. And so the first thing that caught people was, a dietitian is eating donuts. Like, this doesn't make sense. So you give them that little question, like, what? So they want to keep reading because they're like, why is a dietitian eating 3 donuts in the morning?
Yes.
And then they keep reading the story to find out that I have anxiety and that I was overwhelmed.
Storytelling is really powerful. And I don't always see everybody's ads, but I'm someone who I've worked a little bit on ad copy, and I'm able to get some approved even for RD to RD and then for my private practice, that you aren't necessarily in somebody's target audience, so you might not be seeing their ads. But one way around that is if you go to anybody's Facebook business page and you hover over their kind of their cover image, there's a little a little information that pops up, and you can click that. It will tell you any active ads that they're running, and you can read their copy. So I go and businesses that I follow, maybe I saw their ad, but I can't find it again. I will go to their business page and I will look at it and I'll screenshot it, and I save those as in a little bank, especially ones that do a good job telling stories. So you can kind of, I don't want to say, you can rob and duplicate, right? Nothing is new in this world. Don't start from scratch.
Yeah, it's a swipe file. I have lots of friends that do that. You get your swipe file, and anything that you see that like really captures you, you screenshot it, and it's just inspiration. So that's all it's. So it's definitely something you can do. And then the other thing I do is I like a lot of fitness pages and interact with them as much as possible, because the more you interact with fitness pages and ads and act like how your customer would act, and then Facebook will think, oh, she's in the market for this, and it will show you more health and fitness ads. So anytime you see a health and fitness ad, click on it.
Then you'll get more ones to add to your swipe file.
You will. So I think one of the first ones was Noom. I think I interacted with Noom's ad, and I did their free trial. And so that was my first, Facebook's okay, she's in this. And so now I'm getting lots of health and fitness ads. So you want to act like how your customer would act, so that you see things from their perspective. We see a lot of business ads because we're business owners, so they know how to find us.
That's a really good point. I didn't think about interacting with, kind of putting on the cloak of I am my target, customer. And that way you'll see more of the ads that are targeted. That's a really good point. So we've kind of danced around. You mentioned some coaching, and I always love to hear, people, what was the most valuable resource as you were starting to plan your webinar versus just getting out there and doing it, and what other tools did you use? Did you take a specific course, whether it's on Facebook ads or webinars? What did you do and use?
Yeah, I've taken a lot of courses. I probably couldn't list them all out here, even if I tried, but I cannot overstate, or I don't know, understate, whatever the right word is for that, the value of having a business coach. I guess I can't overstate it. I don't know what to say there. But yeah, get a business coach. It's really great to have somebody to coach you through it, especially when fear pops up. And a lot of times we don't even recognize it. We recognize it as something else, like it's procrastination, or it's prioritization, or I've got other things. My family is the most important thing. But if you really dig down deep into it, it's fear and anxiety of you're not doing it because you're afraid of what will happen. And once you really dive in deep to that fear and confront it head on, then you'll be able to move over that hurdle and go on to the next one. So I think everybody needs a good coach. I have a coach now that's coaching me through some things I'm working on now with doing more video marketing and stuff like that. So I think it's always important to have a coach. And it's worth the investment. So I know people say, well, I can't hire a coach because it's expensive. But if a coach can help you really explode your business and get it to the next level, then isn't it worth investing in yourself instead of purchasing something else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always think it's good to listen to people who, have made a successful move into entrepreneurship. And, there's nuggets of truth in everything people tell you, right? Whether that's 100%, the approach you need to take, but to listen and absorb it. And that getting a good coach, it's like I could just put it on repeat, and we could just go, we're taking a break, and just press the button and let it play, because so many of the people who I've had on the show who are, successful have said I had a really great coach. So I think that's very important wisdom there. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take a quick look here through the questions to make sure that those people who are here. So people were asking about finding a coach. I don't want to digress off too much, but that's questions come up before, but asking other
that would be
people.
a really great topic for a whole Facebook Live is how to find a good coach.
I'm actually going to write that down because I love blog post ideas, and I'm like, I could ask dietitians how they found their coach and what were some, lessons learned and questions you would recommend asking. So how to find a coach.
Well, I'm trying to think how I've found my coaches. Really, I think I found them mainly through their marketing, either on Facebook or they're doing podcasts and they podcast, and I really just get to know them through their podcast. And then, so all the things that we're doing to market our businesses are the things that our coaches are doing to market to us. Right. So podcasts, Facebook ads, that kind of thing. But I do think it's very important because I've had some bad experiences too, where I've hired some really bad stuff. So where I've like almost lost a lot of money and I had to do like a chargeback. And so be careful. Like there are scams out there. And there are people who are pretending that they know what they're doing and they really don't. But they're just putting on like fake it till you make it type of stuff. So you really want to make sure that they have real testimonials of real people that have really existed and that their team is, they're real people that have gotten these results. And that you click with them, like they're good, their personality types match. One thing that I did interview several coaches who were dietitians, and I have hired, like I took Stephanie Claremont's program for creating online courses, but I didn't want to hire just dietitian coaches because even though I respect dietitians and I think they're amazing and they have a lot to contribute, I also think that I already have that perspective of a dietitian who's a business owner. So I wanted some different perspectives of people who are in video marketing or who are in traditional online marketing that just have other types of knowledge that I don't have. So nothing against the dietitian coaches that are out there. I think you're doing great things. But for me personally, I wanted to hire somebody who wasn't a dietitian to get a different perspective.
Thanks for sharing your approach there. Really helpful.
Yeah.
So kind of back to the topic of webinars, how we talked a little bit about, we touched on marketing, we talked a little bit on Facebook. We were starting to dive into the copy and, the image that you used and that targeting. What specific tools did you find helpful there? And what was that learning curve like how did you approach that process? How did you make that happen?
Finding the tools?
Yeah, I've run a few Facebook ads, and initially, I actually had Louisa McClure on here. If you are wanting to learn about Facebook ads, she did a live show, I think a year ago, but she really broke down that whole campaign level and then ad set level and then ads and figuring out what all that is, just to get kind of a working knowledge. She did a really great job in that live show, which I highly recommend. So then when she gets that.
So first of all, I just have played around with it a lot. And I think that there's two ways to learn. It's either you find somebody who's done it and you learn from them, or you play around with it and figure it out. Those are kind of the only two ways. One of them takes a lot more time than the other. So you just have to judge whether or not you have the time to play with it and figure it out, or whether you want to go to the expert and just kind of take the shortcut by learning from them. And I've done both. So I've taken both classes and courses on Facebook ads from other people who know what they're doing and getting some coaching on there. And then I've also just been in the back end of Facebook and just like, well, let me touch this button and see what happens. And, and of course you're going to spend a little bit of money, but if you're just testing something, don't spend much money on it. So if you're just going to say, well, what does this ad look like and what does it do? Maybe spend $10 or something like that. You don't have to spend a ton of money to be if you spend $10 and you get 10 opt-ins, that's pretty good. Maybe you should do another one copy that, duplicate it and try it again with a bigger budget.
With your ads, were you sending people directly to the registration page for the webinar?
Yeah, so I sent people to a registration page. They clicked on the link. I do use lead pages now. So lead pages integrates with GoToWebinar, but if you don't want to mess with that yet, really the important part is your
Lead
relationship.
pages would just be kind of a really nice fancy landing page, which would help to, kind of from that copy, from that story to get, oh, this is more information about the webinar rather than just, hey,
Yeah.
register right now, right?
Yeah, and it looks really pretty, and
And I know
you
they have
can,
templates like webinar template, click.
yeah, it's very cookie cutter. You can just put your stuff in. It doesn't take much time, and so it does. Of course, it's another tool that costs money, but it just depends on how far along you are in the process of whether you're spending a lot of money on these tools or not. But if you really are just starting out, I would recommend just doing the native registration page with like your webinar software and just going from there. Because really the important part is your content and what you're sharing with the world, and the relationships that you're building. That's more important than anything else. And we focus so much on these tools. And really what we should be focusing on is the people, because the tools don't matter as much as the people that we're serving and what our message is for them.
Right. Awesome. So I think making sure that you have a chance to add in any other kind of tips that you think, maybe mistakes that you see people make when you hear other dietitians that maybe are thinking about doing a webinar where you just want to jump on and be like, stop, don't do that.
I
And
think the
kind of
biggest
maybe what you would
mistake,
want people to know before they jump in.
yeah, I think the biggest mistake people make is that they quit too soon. One of, I think, my successes so far, and it will continue, is because I'm just relentlessly like continuing to do this, even though I'm not yet like this crazy big success story. I'm sure it will happen. I know it's inevitable, but it's not yet like I'm not on national TV yet. I'm not like this, big name yet. So it doesn't matter where you are in the process, just be relentless about continuing to do it, continuing to put yourself out there. It doesn't matter if nobody's watching because you're learning. And so that's the important part, is if you're continuing to learn and grow, then the next time when somebody is watching, you're going to be even better. So
Yeah,
I've done webinars.
that is so important. I have yet to have someone come on and be like, yeah, my first thing out of the gate was awesome, wild success. So, you have to be
Exactly.
willing to, fall down a few times. And like you said, being relentless, that acknowledging that you're going to have to, you're going to have to want it through the challenges, through the failures.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're continually focusing on like, well, nobody's signing up and nobody's registering and nobody's listening, then, you're going to give up too soon. So instead be like, okay, well, this is great because this is a good practice for me.
And
I'm
taking it in
glad.
chunks, right? Like there's a lot to leverage. Okay, so now I need to learn the webinar technology and define success differently. I mean, even as I'm talking myself through this, that rather than going, I've got to perfect the ad copy and my target audience, and that, go ahead and just try to figure out the webinar tool first, right? Try to
Yeah,
get,
just invite your family
yeah,
and
like
your
get that done
friends to the
first.
webinar and just teach them for free. I mean, if you're not willing to do that, I really want to ask you, like, are you really willing to put what it takes into having a business? So just help people and serve them, and the money will come later. So invite your friends and family, invite your church friends, serve them, provide them great information, help them get healthier. You're not working for free, you're learning. So, and there's a difference, like, when you're being taken advantage of and working for free, and when you're learning and going through the process of figuring it out.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. So the tip that you had of just, keep trying, being relentless.
Yeah.
So really appreciate the time that you came on. Tell us how people, if they have questions about webinars, how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah. Yeah, so my name is Samantha Scruggs, but I've changed everything on Facebook to Samantha Leigh RD. So I'm sorry if that's confused everybody, but so Samantha Leigh RD, that's my middle name. So you guys can reach out to me on Facebook. I'm definitely in a lot of the RD groups, so feel free to tag me and ask questions. And I'm definitely willing to answer kind of my experiences with it. And yeah, and of course in Symposium, you guys can catch me there too.
Yeah, for those of you that are registered for the RD Entrepreneur Symposium, you're talking about Facebook advertising, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll that'll
So you can
be,
get a lot more deep into that.
yeah. And I'll go ahead and link to that. What do I think? The live show that was about Facebook ads, because that might also, if you're not registered for the RD Entrepreneur Symposium, might offer some value as well. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so we are taking, let me see, we're taking a couple weeks off. So we'll be back. The RD to RD live show will be back on April 24th. And I'm having Mandy Enright on talking about basics of insurance reimbursement, really why you should take health insurance for your services. So we're kind of coming at that angle. Not sure if you are an insurance, if you take insurance in your
I
practice.
do. Yeah, I do.
I do. And I think it's kind of one of those things. Here's my take on it, that it's like going to the gym. You go there and anyone's just like, oh, it was the worst workout. Like I tell my husband, oh, I'm so sore. It was awful. Yet we actually really like it. And we keep going back. And deep down, we really actually like it. That taking insurance is one of these things that I honestly feel like people make it out to be really, really awful. But really, in my experience, it takes a little bit of being relentless, but it hasn't been nearly as torturous as people honestly made it sound like it was going to be. So I wanted Mandy Enright, who is got a lot of experience. She was in the Nutrition Entrepreneurs Practice Group as a state reimbursement rep, grew her practice, accepted insurance. And so she's going to kind of break down some of the myths and talk about taking insurance for your private practice. So should be an interesting, so that's 2 weeks from today.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I hope to see you there in a couple weeks. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining today.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here.
All right, thanks, Samantha.